Eight of Swords, short story number 1. Your card is number 13, Death. A new phase in your life is about to begin. In her report, she marked the item as misplaced, as the director had requested. But it had not been misplaced. Emiliana Huxley had wrapped the object in an opaque white cloth and tucked it into her pocket. She told herself that she would take her time, maybe visit the day guards for a chat about new museum acquisitions, but instead she found herself hurrying through the hallways towards her destination, the Hollow Archive. Uncapitalized, as it did not exist on paper, and therefore did not deserve such acknowledgement. Emiliana scanned her badge with an electronic click. In the hands of anyone but an approved agent, the badge returned dull from incompatible skin chemistry, so it was imperative that she never switch hand creams. The interior of the Hollow Archive resembled an ordinary warehouse, or, at least, it resembled the other warehouses Emiliana had previously seen. The ceilings were low except over the special containment area, where they soared up for uncountable feet, the steel supports vanishing into the artificial light. The floors were kept pristine not by the continual efforts of the janitors, but by the general absence of personnel. Ordinary brown boxes were stacked on top of black shelves, marked with plain white printed labels. The contents of the boxes were described in cryptic sentences which revealed nothing, and were usually full of blank paper anyway. More interesting boxes had been wrapped with a plain white sealing ribbon, which would indicate whether anyone disturbed the box after its internment in the Hollow Archive. Emiliana ignored them. She went past the special containment area, where the boxes grew to an enormous height and width, still wrapped with their pristine white sealing ribbons and marked with white labels. She walked towards the back of the archives, the lights now dimmed to uselessness. The items were stored in heavy steel crates, each one bolted to the ground with thick chains. A colored grosgrain ribbon, patterned with stylized interpretations of the contents, was wrapped around each box. The pattern served as warnings of the dangers present should the contents be released, but the scenes of carnage did not translate particularly well to the ribbons, and went ignored. Now Emiliana was in the back of the Hollow Archive. It was sometimes called the Vault, but not enough people knew about it for the name to catch on. Freshly severed hand that had been in there for decades, paintings showing glimpses of the future, a book that fluttered hopefully at the door as she passed its cell. She scanned her badge along the magnetic strip of cell 5J. The door slid away and a single silver pedestal rose from the darkness, the only decoration in an otherwise entirely featureless nothing. Emiliana slipped the item from her pocket, still wrapped in its cloth, and she rested it carefully in the center of the pedestal. The cloth slithered to the floor, revealing a small, russet-brown pearl. It was slightly misshapen on one side, like a tiny teardrop. While she typed in the pearl's details, she thought she could smell blueberries. She remembered the look on the director's face when they had seen the pearl, sitting in the museum's mailbox like an accusation. How they had shoved the pearl at Emiliana, told her to record it in the museum's log, and then hide it in the Hollow Archive. She knew what the museum collected. The taxidermies and crystals and glass flowers were just for show. The real museum was the archive. Emiliana's job was moving the objects that came into the museum down to the archives, to make sure they were filed away neatly and then promptly forgotten. All of them were vastly more strange than this pearl. But somehow, it was far worse than all of them. She closed the door on the containment cell and heard the lock whir and click. The flying book slammed against the glass walls of its cell, pages crumpling. The face of the doll in the red dress cracked down the middle, and spiders crawled from the shattered porcelain. The paintings melted and shifted until all they showed was the pearl, the cloth on the floor, and Emiliana staring at it, looking utterly terrified. Her hands moved to her face. Was that how she really looked? Despite her knowledge of the Hollow Archive, she really didn't know what was inside. The objects were all nonsensical, random. Piles of Legos, an antique cannon, the skull of a fox made from brass, but clearly grown, organically, the sails of a ship that had been to Antarctica, and she didn't know where they all came from. The pearl rolled from its pedestal and fell with a resounding crack. The doll turned its shattered face towards Emiliana. She thought she could smell blueberries, maple syrup. The pearl flew back to its place on the pedestal. As she left, she wondered if she'd done the right thing, hiding the pearl down there even without knowing what it was. But she also knew that it didn't matter. This has been Eight of Swords. This episode was written, performed, directed, and produced by Mia Ferraiolo, with sound editing by Mia Ferraiolo, not a different one, it's still me. Music was Flotsam by Parallel Park. Questions, comments? Message me on Twitter at 8swordsradio. That's the number 8, and then just the word swords and the word radio. And now, some music.